Hello everyone, I hope you're having a good fast if you are fasting today. If you're listening to this when it's being recorded on the fast of Talmud. Today's Daf is Daf 73 Amud A of Menachot. So dive straight in. Talmud Loma. The verse states, L'chol hamincha asher te'afa b'satano, L'chol b'nei Aaron tiyeh ish ke'achiv. The verse states, and every meal offering that is baked in the oven shall all the sons of Aaron have, each man like the other. In Leviticus 7:9-10, this verse emphasizes that the sons of Aaron must divide the meal offering equally among themselves, without exchanging it for a portion of any other offering. The Bible continues, one might have thought that they may not receive a share of the meal offering in exchange for the portions of animal offerings, since they do not substitute for them in the case of poverty. One who is too poor to afford to bring an animal offering, e.g., in the case of a sin offering, determined on a sliding scale, does not bring a meal offering in its stead. Since meal offerings are not brought in place of animal offerings, there is clearly no connection between them, but perhaps they receive a share of the meal offerings in exchange for the portions of bird offerings, since they do not substitute for them in the case of poverty. If one is so destitute that he cannot afford to bring a bird offering, he brings a meal offering. Therefore, the same verse states, and all that is prepared in the deep pan shall all the sons of Aaron have, again emphasizing that all must have an equal share in that meal offering. The Bible continues, one might have thought that they may not receive a share of meal offerings in exchange for portions of bird offerings, since these bird offerings are types of offerings that involve blood sprinkled on the altar, and those meal offerings are types of offerings made of flour. Perhaps they may receive a share of portions of bird offerings in exchange for portions of animal offerings, since both categories are types of offerings that involve blood sprinkled on the altar. Therefore, the same verse states, and on a pan shall all the sons of Aaron have, a seemingly superfluous phrase, which teaches that one may not receive a share of even of bird offerings in exchange for portions of animal offerings. The Bible continues, one might have thought that they may not receive a share of bird offerings in exchange for portions of animal offerings, because with regard to these, the birds they are processing, killing, is executed by hand, by pinching the nape of the neck, and with regard to those, the animals, their processing, killing, is executed with a utensil, by slaughtering with a knife. But perhaps they may receive a share of meal offering in exchange for portions of other meal offerings. With regard to flour offerings, the Torah states that these are to be given equally to all sons of Aaron. These rules, and no meal offerings may be exchanged, even among like offerings. Rather, the remainder of each offering is to be distributed by itself. This is according to the ruling of the Bible of Roman Sefer 10:15. Since the processing of both these and those are carried out by hand, therefore the next verse states, and every meal offering mixed with oil shall all the sons of Aaron have, in Leviticus 7:10. The Bible continues, one might have thought that they may not receive a share of a meal offering prepared on a pan in exchange for portions of a meal offering often prepared in a deep pan, or portions of a meal offering prepared in a deep pan in exchange for portions of a meal offering prepared on a pan, since the actions of this pan would result in a hard product, and the actions with that deep pan result in a soft product. But perhaps they may receive a share of meal offering prepared on a pan in exchange for the portions of a different meal offering prepared on a pan, or a share of a meal offering prepared in a deep pan in exchange for portions of a different meal offering prepared in a deep pan. Therefore, the same verse states, or dry, shall all the sons of Aaron have, in Leviticus 7:10. The Bible continues, one might have thought they may not receive a share of offerings of the most sacred order, i.e. meal offerings, exchanged for a portion of a less similar offering. And they may receive a share of offerings of a less sanctity in exchange for a portion of another similar offering. Therefore, the same verse states, with regard to meal offerings, shall all the sons of Aaron have, as well as one as another, in Leviticus 7:10. And there it appears the verse, if he offers it for a thanks offering, Leviticus 7:12, from which is derived, just as one may not receive a share of one offering in exchange for a portion of another similar offering in the case of offerings of the most sacred order, so too one may not receive a share of one offering in exchange for a portion of another similar offering in the case of offerings of less sanctity, e.g. a thanks offering. The Bible further expounds this verse. It states, one as well as another, ish ka'ahev, What's the footnote? Tosfot initially note that although the Bible employs the terminology of receives a share, this does not mean that within the portions of one offering, priests are allowed to exchange shares with each other. See Tosfot Shabbat 149a. According to the conclusion presented in Tosfot here, the exchanging portions of offerings does not apply to portions received from one offering, rather it applies only to dividing offerings in exchange for other offerings, even if both offerings are of the same type. This is also the opinion of the Rambam, Sefer Vod Hilchot Maaseh Korbanot 10:15. Even if he is blemished, but free about mum, why may the blemished priest partake of the sacred offering, sacred items, when they are disqualified from performing the sacrificial rites? Rashi in his commentary on Kedushin 53a suggests that even blemished priests do assist in certain tasks of the sacrificial order, such as removing worms from the wood of the arrangement, slaughtering animals, skinning carcasses, and cutting the slaughtered animal into parts. But a priest who is a minor may not receive a share. Minors do not receive portions of offerings even of lesser sanctity. They may partake of offerings even of the most sacred order. By contrast, so as long as an adult priest is ritually clean, he receives a share. This is the halacha even if he is blemished, whether the blemish is permanent or temporary, and whether he was blemished from birth or later in life. Even if he is unblemished. This writer evidently interprets the verse, and every meal offering is oil or dry shall also found have one as well as another. In Leviticus 7:10. Brings the prohibition against priests exchanging shares of offerings. Mr. Hadad has Hizkiah stated that this verse is referring to the priest of eating of the remainder of the meal offering and the meal offering was so returned. And what answers with regard to the prohibition against exchanging priestly shares? That is derived from the term every meal offering. By contrast, Hizkiah derives his principle with regard to these two meal offerings from the rest of the verse. They must ask, but haven't you already derived from the word every that which Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda states, that when one vows to offer a meal offering, all items must be of a uniform type, either loaves or wafers. See 63b. The Gemara answers, what halacha concerning the exchange of shares of offerings derived from the addition of the word and, the term and, the whole meal offering. Ravina said, according to the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, the source of the halacha that the Oma offering and the meal offering of Sota are eaten comes from the Braita that Levi teaches. What does that mean? Levi, this is the sage Levi ben Sissi, who lived in the transitional generation between the Tanaim and Amoraim. Levi was the preeminent disciple of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi and was personally close to him and his son Rabbi Shimon. Levi was so close to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi that sages referred to him as those who learned before the sages, and he was consistently involved in halachic discussions with him. Occasionally, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi would speak to him harshly, but he did so only to instill reverence in his students. On the contrary, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi valued Levi greatly and called him a person like me. In his generation, Levi was considered one of those who was complete in all respects. He was a master in halacha and a master in Agada, distinguished in his knowledge of the Bible and a notable expounder. At the same time, as the leader of the public prayer, the sages said that he was speaking personally toward God, and although his prayer was answered, he was punished by God for his behavior. See Tanya 25a. After the death of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Levi was left without someone to teach him, and consequently he set out for Babylonia. Basing himself in Nahadea, he would travel about with his father Shmuel, and he also renewed his relationship with Sage Rav. The Talmud records a number of conversations held between the three and Shmuel. Apparently, Levi passed away in Babylonia along with the other prominent disciples of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Levi also edited an important collection of Braita referred to as the Braita of the school of Levi. Some suggest that the outstanding Amor Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi was his son. It's hard to resolve his identification with the chronology of his associations. As Levi teaches, the verse states with regard to the priestly gifts, this shall be yours of the most sacred items reserved from the fire, every offering of theirs, and every meal offering of theirs, and every sin offering of theirs, and every guilt offering of theirs, which may restore to me, shall be most holy for you and for your sons. Numbers 18:9. The word every in each clause includes a number of additional offerings that are eaten by the priest. Torah states, every offering of theirs, to include the log of oil that accompanies the guilt offering of a recovered leper. The remainder of the leper's log of oil is eaten by the priest after 7 sprinklings and after applying the oil to the leper's right ear, thumb, and big toe in accordance with the opinion of Laban. And the Savior's right hand of Kohanim 1:4. She's is also eaten by the priest. As it might enter your mind to say that since the Medicine Woman writes in its verse from the fire, this will exclude this oil, which is not brought onto the altar. Therefore, the verse teaches us every offering to include the leper's oil. The Bible continues expounding the verse, and every meal offering of theirs, serving to include the Omer meal offering. The Omer meal offering is eaten by the priest after the removal and burning of a handful in accordance with the ruling of the Bible. I'm saying to me in Sofim 7:12. And the meal offering of jealousy, Achilas minchas katanos, Tinaos. The meal offering of jealousy, which is also called meal offering of sota, is eaten by the priest after removal and burning of a handful in accordance with the ruling of the Bible. Imam Sefer Nashim Hechad Sota 3:15. Brought by a sota, teaching that they are also eaten by the priest, as it might enter your mind to say that since Meshwan states, and they shall eat those wherewith atonement was made, Exodus 29:32, the verse thereby indicates that the priest may eat only those offerings that help the owner achieve atonement. And this Omer comes to permit eating from the new grain, in Leviticus 22:9-14, not to achieve atonement. And concerning the other offering, i.e. the meal offering of a sota, as well, it comes to clarify whether or not the accused woman is guilty of adultery, but does not achieve atonement. Therefore, the verse teaches us every meal offering to teach that these two meal offerings are included. The Bible continues to expound the verse. The verse states, and every sin offering of theirs, to include the bird sin offering. A bird sin offering is eaten by the priest after its blood is squeezed out upon the altar, and according to the ruling of the Bible. Roman Sefer 7:7. Teaching that it is also eaten by the priest. As it might enter your mind to say, the priest may not eat it because it is an unslaughtered animal carcass, as it is killed by pinching the nape of the neck, see Leviticus 5:8, not by conventional slaughter. Therefore, the verse teaches us every sin offering, teaching that bird sin offerings are included. The Bible continues to expand the verse. The Torah states, and every guilt offering of theirs, Achilas ha'asham, the meat of the guilt offering include the guilt offering of the Nazarite and the guilt offering of a leper, is eaten by the priest according to the ruling of the Bible. Roman Sefer 9:2-10:1. To include the guilt offering of the Nazarite, who has become ritually impure, see Numbers 6:12, and the guilt offering of the leper, teaching that they are also eaten by the priest. The Gemara objects. With regard to the guilt offering of the leper, it is explicitly written with regard to it, for as the sin offering is the priest, so is the guilt offering. Leviticus 14:13, which already teaches that it is eaten by the priest. The Gemara answers, rather the verse serves to include the guilt offering of the Nazarite, stating that it stated is like the guilt offering of the leper. As it might enter your mind to say, the guilt offering of the Nazarite is not sacrifice for atonement, but rather it comes to prepare the Nazarite to begin his period of Nazarite anew, and therefore its meat would not be eaten by the priest. Therefore, the verse teaches us every guilt offering, teaching that the guilt offering of the Nazarite is included. The Bible concludes, "This shall be yours of the very sacred items, which they may restore." This is referring to an item stolen from a convert. Gezel Hager, the one who robs another and takes a false oath denying that he has robbed him, or to confess to the theft, is liable to bring a guilt offering and to return the item along with an additional 1/5 of its value. See Leviticus 5:20-26. If the rival owner has passed away, the thief must return item paid on sum to its owner's inheritors. The Torah writes that if the owner has no inheritor, the item and the additional sum are given to a priest. See Numbers 5:8. The sages understood that this halacha refers to a convert who is robbed, as only a convert can have no relatives whatsoever who have from him. If we were a convert, no own inheritors. and before the convert died, he took a false oath denying the robbery. He must pay the item's principal and an additional 1/5 of the item's value to the priest, whose priestly watch coincides with that day. In accordance with the ruling of the Beit of Raman Sefer Zerayim, Hilchot Makom 1:7, Sefer Nezikin, Hilchot Gezela, Vaveda 8:5. Who has no heirs and subsequently dies. In this case, the stolen item is given to the priest together with an additional 1/5 of its worth. The phrase "for you and for your sons" means that it is yours and your son's personal property, and it may be used even to betray the woman with it, and it does not belong to the temple treasury. Rav Hona said, and that moves on to the next Amud. Thank you for listening, and all the best. Bye.